The bigger stuff was based on my credibility, my reputation. But I'm a great believer, if they don't pay attention.
Welcome back to the show. I'm your host, Remington Ramsey, and today we have Bluey's dad on the show, and I say that tongue-in-cheek. We have the author of Blue Fishing, Steve Sims, author, podcaster, speaker, coach, big idea guy, big personality. Steve, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me and the comparison.
Man, I'm glad that I'm the first one to bring this to you. But when I first got your book, it was recommended to me by Devin out in Alaska. Devin, if you're listening to this, shout out to Devin. And she's a big fan of yours. But she said sometimes Steve stressed me out because he's got this accent. He gets really excited, even curses sometimes. And when I was listening to it, all I could hear is Bluey's dad getting a little edgy, which is pretty fun for the young parents in the crowd. But you crack me up. I love watching you on Instagram. You're full of energy. Where do you get your energy from?
Disruption. I tend to find that when we fight things or when we fight for something, we've only got a certain amount of energy. But when you're disrupting and you enjoy it and you're smiling, then you could do that forever. So I like to disrupt things and maybe change the way you think and act.
Well, you've been up to a lot more than just that book. That was just my intro, but I would like to start there because I'm curious. At the beginning of the book, you talk about kind of what got you into this whole big thinking. To be honest, I'm not really sure all the things that you do for clients. I know you coach clients. I know you get things done that other people feel like they couldn't get done. But in the first couple chapters, you talk about how this whole thing started because you were the bouncer of a bar or club that was not getting any attraction. And just by making one single move, you actually got that club hopping. Can you talk about that?
Yeah. It was funny. I thought being the doorman of a nightclub was actually my low point of life. You know, being a bricklayer from East London, this was back in the 80s and 90s. So we didn't have Instagram to show us how inadequate our lives were. But I just felt something in me that, you know, I know how to work hard. I'm a bricklayer. I'm getting up at 4:00 in the morning. I'm going home at 8:00 at night, you know, wet, cold, ripped up, cut up, bruised. So I can work hard. And I know how to hustle, but I'm not being given the opportunities. Where do I find those? So I went out to try and find wealthy people to try and hang around with. And I failed at so many jobs: stockbroker, insurance agents, chauffeur, loads. And because I was kind of like created big and ugly, I naturally got this job as a doorman. But that's where it happens. As an entrepreneur, you see things differently. It's like Neo from the Matrix. You just see things. I saw an opportunity. I got a Harvard PhD of human interaction and psychology from the door of a nightclub because I was looking for it. My other two meatheads, they were looking to avoid the fights, score the hot chick for the night. You know, that's what their focus. And we get what we look for. And I wanted answers. I wanted opportunity. So I found it in front of me in a nightclub. And I started to look at the people I didn't want to surround myself with and stop them coming in. And as you said, for a nightclub that's not getting much traction, stopping people walking through the door is the last thing you want to do.
Yeah.
But if you focus on the quality over the quantity, you create desire. And all of a sudden and oh my God, I was hated. You know, the managers wanted to fire me. In fact, I was fired, but I actually went back the following day pretending as I wasn't fired and just carried on. Because that's
the first takeaway right there for anyone listening.
And well, they say that one of the key factors of a successful entrepreneur is ignorance.
Yeah.
And
I believe that.
I had that. And so I kept going with what I could see. And I wanted to work it through. And I was very careful on who I let through the door. And it was small numbers. Then, as you know from the book, I started doing passwords.
Yeah.
And the passwords were stupid. And you say about Bluey, okay?
Yeah.
Perfect example. I used to give people stupid passwords to get into my clubs.
Yeah.
And one of them was a test. Now, bear in mind, this was the 90s. We didn't have like phones in our hand to give us all the answers. I would say to people, right, for you to get into my nightclub, you've got to turn up at the door and you've got to name 2 of the Teletubbies. Or you've got to name the lion from The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. Now, of course, we could all pull our phones out and get those answers instantly now.
Yeah.
But back then, you had people turning up that owned countries, banks, businesses, going Tinky Winky Po, and we'd let you in, But here's the funny thing, and I didn't realize this. One client, one guest said that the way I orchestrate the room is genius. And I was like, oh, thank you very much. He said, no. You don't realize what you're feeding us. And I was like, what do you mean? He said, step inside the room. Let the other meatheads do their job. Step inside the room. Now, I had trained them to only let people in that said these passwords.
Yes.
Now, of course, when you've got that humility to say Aslan or Tinky Winky or Bluey, when you walk through that door, you're smiling.
Oh, sure.
You imagine if all you saw every day was everyone walking through your front door all the time, every second, giggling with a massive grin on. Can you imagine what that office would be like?
Yeah.
And I, without realizing it, had created that atmosphere. So people were looking at who was coming through the door and they'd see him grin and they would grin because they would know. I remember
So they're waiting and looking at the door like, how are these people going to come in knowing what they had just said, Tinky Winky?
Yeah.
Man,
and it just took off. But you've got to, I think the first thing you realize is you got to focus, and this is important, focus on the room that you create. Don't grab everyone, because when you grab everyone, you grab no one.
Yeah. There's some really good lessons in there, even just hosting events in general, not even being at the front door of a nightclub. But if you're hosting events, I used to do this thing where if I would host an event, I was expecting 100 people to show and only 50 did show. I would be visibly upset and I would penalize the 50 people that did show for the ones that didn't. And how messed up is that? Here's 50 people that want to be in your presence and do whatever it is the event has. And I can't, get past my own ego to impact them because of the ones that didn't. Now I'm actually giving them more attention, the people who didn't show.
Yeah.
So man, there's a lot of lessons and just that short bit from the front door. So that evolved. So originally they hired you because to be a bouncer, but you became so much more than that. And this concept is what explain the whole concept of blue fishing.
It was a Trojan horse. I knew very early on that, I wasn't good looking. I didn't sound sexy. I had in my mind, and we've all got this, all the doubt in the world. How could anybody take me seriously? And for anyone that's not watching this, but listening to this, I'm 245 pounds of tattooed biker, no hair, goatee, eyebrow piercing, I'm not who you want to meet in a dark alley kind of thing. So I had all of that self-belief that I was not good enough to be in front of these people. But I noticed very early on that if you focus on being somebody's solution, they don't care what you look like. You see, we're talking to a lot of realtors out there, aren't we?
Mm-hmm.
All of those realtors care about what they look like rather than what they solve.
Mm.
And, you've got a lot of realtors out there, and I get very confused. And I've spoken at a lot of realtor conventions. And sometimes when I'm seeing advertisements for, properties and realtors and real estate agencies, I'm trying to look, am I looking at a real estate advert or am I looking at a Tinder advert? It's kind of very confusing as to what they're trying to do here.
Yeah.
Rather than focusing on the problem that they solve. So when I was working in the club, I thought, well, okay, you like going to nightclubs. If I can get you to a really cool nightclub, you'll talk to me. If I can get you into a premiere, you'll talk to me. If I can get you into a fashion week, all local stuff at the time, you'll talk to me. So my focus was like, look, I know you like good nightlife. I know a way that I could get you some, some really cooler stories by getting you into some really cool parties. Would that be of interest to you? Knowing full well that the answer was going to be yes.
Yeah.
I would always charge them. But then by doing so, now I became I became the oracle of nightlife.
Sure.
And so it went from getting people into parties and clubs, and I carried on doing this. And I got bigger and I got bigger and I got bigger. Not because I cared about the events, but I cared about making your cocktail stories more interesting, which in turn gave me access to you. So I went from getting people into nightclubs to working for Elton John, getting into Elon Musk's SpaceX, sending people down to the Titanic and bringing them back. Sorry if that's a bit harsh. And people front row, back row, on stage, drum lessons with Guns N' Roses, singing lessons with Journey. You know, I became what Forbes called the real life Wizard of Oz, but never because I liked the events, the red carpet, or the paparazzi, but it was all to make you connect with me. And then I became your solution, not your Tinder date.
So as you started to grow this concept and take it one event at a time, one client at a time, how did you decide what to charge these people? Was it based on the size of the event, or like how did you determine what the cost would be?
I based it on time and energy of relationship. Like someone said to me the other week, they said, "Oh, can you get hold of Richard Branson?" I went, "Yeah." And they went, "Oh, well, how much would that cost me?" And I said, "I don't know, 200 grand." And they were like, "But you can just text him." And I said, "Look, it's not the time it takes me to text him. It's the time that it took me to be able to get to a position for him to be able to receive and answer my text."
100%.
So that you're actually paying for that. You're taking the energy and the effort it's taken for me to formulate that relationship to be taken seriously. That's what you pay for. If you want a couple of tickets to a Taylor Swift concert, that'll be 10% of the price. But actually, the bigger stuff was based on my credibility, my reputation. But I'm a great believer. If they don't pay attention.
There's an artist, and I can't remember who it is, so I'm not going to quote it yet. Maybe you know this, but there's an artist who is on the street and paints this picture, and it takes 10 minutes. And the person commissioned them to do it. They said, "Paint this," and they did. And they said that'll be, call it $500. And the person said, "What? That only took you 10 minutes. Why are you charging me $500?" And the artist said, "No, that didn't take 10 minutes. That took 20 years to paint." And it's the same concept what you're saying. I don't know if it was Picasso, somebody said it, but it's the same thing you're saying. The ability to do this took way more time, money, and effort than just the fact that it only takes me a minute to do it now.
Yeah, exactly. You've got to, the trouble is when you give something away for free, that's what it's now valued at. And that's the problem. So, you know, if you are the solution to somebody's problem, they'll pay whatever you charge.
This is timely that we're talking about this, because I'm sure you've heard about the lawsuits going on within real estate for realtors, basically trying to, for the next 6 months or so, prove they're worth their commissions. So the fact that we're talking about this is pretty fascinating, and it's a good way to think about it outside, which is a good segue for me, because I was going to ask you why someone would hire you who's never been a realtor to coach them versus a real estate coach. And before you answer that, right there is a great example, because you're thinking about things on a much higher level than just within the industry. But go ahead. Why would someone hire you instead of someone who's been in real estate, insert name?
So, yeah, exactly. I think I've spoken at over 20 real estate conventions, and probably the same in the mortgage world as well. And so I've been on the stage with all the big names that you can think of in those industries. Absolutely every single one of them. I guarantee it. And the thing that I've noticed is because they've been in the industry, they're teaching what worked 20 years ago. Now, the simple fact is, what worked 6 months ago doesn't work today. We are moving at considerable speed. The downside is that when you go to those conventions, these people are making you better than you were 12 months ago. Today, you don't want to be better. Today, you want to be different. And that's the focus. I actually did a speech once, I say once, it was about 3 months ago, to a realtor group in Vegas. And my whole my whole speech was on, are you Lady Gaga? My whole thing was on, I came on, massive great pictures of Lady Gaga behind me. I forget what the bloody tune was. I'm not a connoisseur of music, but that was the tune I had that I walked up on stage, and I was all about the Lady Gaga. And I opened up the statement with, everyone stand up and stay standing if you think you're Lady Gaga. And of course, absolutely everyone sits down. Now, Lady Gaga is not, and I asked the crowd this, I said, put your hands up if you think today she is the greatest vocalist in existence. And I think out of maybe, I don't know, there may have been 600 people in New York. Maybe you got 2 or 3 people that were fans of Lady Gaga and stuck their hand up. And I said, are you telling me that you couldn't go down into a tube station in London or New York and hear someone that's a better vocalist than her? Is she a better vocalist than, I don't know, Kelly Clarkson, And I threw and of course, then everyone put their hands down. I said, okay, tell me, is she the greatest actor that we have today? And of course, no one by now put their hands up. Yeah. But she's won Grammys and she's won Oscars. Why? Because she's not better than everybody else. She's different. And we're looking for difference today. What I teach people is how to stand out from the crowd. How to not be able to be compared to that realtor, how to be unique, how to be the unicorn that someone goes, I need something. That's what I need. I need the Lady Gaga of that industry. And so you want to focus today on not listening to what was taught 5 years ago, but on being different. Because again, different is being better than better.
So you bring a unique perspective and you focus on being unique and different. But one thing that I've just noticed just from following you is that you just think bigger than everyone else that's in the room. What are the limiting, what is a common thread you see when you're coaching people or talking in a big crowd that you see as the most common limiting belief that people have that keeps them from thinking big or thinking that they can accomplish bigger things?
Well, the biggest problem is always you. We all know that, to quote Taylor Swift, hi, I'm the problem. The bottom line of it is, and this is daft, and it's all down to conversations. Okay. You've got to be able to understand what is steering you. And the amount of times it's you that gets you into trouble and stops you from going forward. You're there going, well, I couldn't do that. I can't do that. I'm not able to do that. Oh my God, I'm too fat. I'm too thin. I'm too tall. I'm too blue. Whatever it is, it's going on up here. Now, we have no problem whatsoever, or we shouldn't, as realtors, having a conversation with someone. Okay? But how many of you have ever driven down the road, and I'm asking you seriously, actually had an out loud, music off conversation with yourself? Now, I ride motorcycles. If there was a camera inside my helmet, I think I'd be locked up. I will literally walk around my garden talking to myself. Steve, I know you're going here, but why are you bothered with that? Well, I'll tell you why I'm bothered. I will literally have like a 2-way conversation with myself because our head dictates how we act. We need to get it on our side. And a lot of people turn around and go, I could never do that. And if you say that, you're right.
Right.
But, and this is a beautiful little segue into the book, Go for Stupid. If you look at all of the people that we revere, Oprah Winfrey, Mother Teresa, Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, Edison, Henry Ford, Walt Disney, any of these people, they didn't care about what you think. They didn't care about the laughter. Look at Elon Musk. The laughter he gets until all of a sudden he unveils what he's working on and you go, oh, I see it now. He doesn't care. And also the other thing is most people that are laughing and jeering at you to create your imposter syndrome, they can't afford you because poor people are very, very noisy and they've got nothing better to do than throw hate.
Right.
But you listen to them. Oh, I'm too fat in this dress. Oh, I shouldn't be wearing, I'm too old for that skirt. Why listen to anybody else other than you? Get yourself on your side, look at where you want to go, and then treble it. You've got to have ridiculous, stupid goals, because 9 times out of 10, you'll fail. But you'll fail 2/3 further than you would have done if you'd have gone for what you'd achieved or gone for what you felt you could achieve. So I'm a great believer that all the great people, they don't listen, they go for ridiculous, stupid goals. And after a while, you start hitting those.
Yeah.
You've got to basically follow the people that you revere and stop listening to the bad noise and frequency of poor people and those that shouldn't be working with you.
The people that are naturally drawn to coaching with you, how long does it take them to take this first step in silencing the crowd and busting through their own limiting beliefs?
So I had someone say to me that there's after Steve and there's before Steve.
Yeah.
And my job is to disrupt you. And I'm going to say, hey, don't join my coaching program. We're not here to sell you on that. There's not even going to be a link on it. But you need to get someone that gets you out of your comfort zone. You need to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. You need to be challenged. And you ain't going to get that shit from someone that's been in the industry for 20 years, because they're just trying to get the speaking gig for the 21st year and the 22nd year. That's their goal.
Right.
But for you to stand out, you've got to change. You've got to do things different. And what you learn today and you implement today to get you ahead of the crowd will be mimicked in the next 3 months, and then you've got to change again. And so it's constant and consistent. And so I rattle people. And I'll be honest with you, I've had a few people that go, I can't do it. I can't work with you. You know, it's too fast. It's too strong. I'm not ready for that change. That's the usual one. But I've only had that a bit. Most of our clients come out and they say there's a before you and there's an after you, and I like me after me. What I'll leave you, well, not leave you, but I'll give you this statement that someone said to me. The definition of hell is to meet the man or woman that you could have been. And that one has always struck me hard. You are hiding behind what you think other people think you should act, sound, or be like. You know, when you die, their opinion isn't going to matter. And it's not a dress rehearsal.
We've talked a lot about like whatever people think. In your estimation, and you've been doing this a long time and at a much bigger degree than even I know, the reason people don't go for bigger things and dream bigger is because of other people's opinions of them. Is that what I'm hearing?
It's their opinion and it's your opinion. And the daft thing is that those people that you trust our opinion shouldn't be working with you. And so, and here's a little, caveat to that. Do you remember, I don't know, 5 years ago, the standard line would be, what would you do today if you knew you couldn't fail?
Yeah.
Do you remember that? I always thought that was crap. Sorry. I always thought that was bad because we want to fail. Everyone that's successful is a serial failure. They don't allow it to define them. They allow it to refine them. Every time you lose a sale because of bad communication, you make the next communication better and you don't lose a sale. So we want to fail often and we want to fail up. But there's a new saying today. What would you do today if you weren't scared of people laughing at you? And in today's world, with the gotcha society and the cancel culture, we're actually more terrified of someone that can't afford us laughing at us.
Yeah. Now, it's interesting you brought up cancel culture, though, because that is different. That does affect livelihoods. It does affect your ability to provide for your family in some cases. Would you say that there's a healthy fear of being canceled that is keeping you from doing things maybe you ought not to? Or is it in your belief that, cancel culture is getting in the way too?
Hugely getting in the way. You see, here's the dumb thing. COVID had a lot of people screaming that we couldn't connect with each other and we couldn't communicate. We're in a time of our life where we've never been more connected, yet never been more disconnected. And during COVID, everyone was moaning about, oh, I can't get out with my friends. I can't connect. I can't go to the gym. They weren't going to the gym before COVID.
Yeah.
But COVID became the time when all of these excuses was like, oh, well,
valid excuses. Yeah.
We became victims.
Yeah.
Now, we started getting bad at communicating when Friendster and MySpace appeared.
Mm-hmm.
And we got to a period, and I'm not trying to romanticize the past, but I am trying to get some framework around it. There was a time when if you had a new car or a new job or a new baby, you'd phone up your mates, you'd get together, you'd have a few drinks, you'd look and go, yeah, it's a baby, and you'd go, hooray, and you'd drink.
Yeah.
Now you have a baby, you throw it up on Facebook, and you are mortified if it doesn't get 1,000 likes by 5 p.m. that night.
Yeah.
We're not having conversations. We're throwing out banners. Our ability to communicate has got really, really bad now. And when you marry it to things like the cancel culture and the gotcha society, not only are we not very good at communicating, we're naturally terrified of it.
Right.
And here's the thing. I don't give a shit.
Yeah.
I am going to call it as it is. I'm going to say what I say. I want you to go, well, Steve, that's not correct. To which I'm going to reply, why? Challenge me and educate me why I'm wrong. If I've offended you, tell me how I've offended you so I can make sure it never happens again. But hey, let's have that conversation.
Yeah.
And I think today, the art of communication, which is, let's be serious, is the single most important tool. Not how tight your skirt is, how you can communicate with your clients. That's the single most valuable tool every realtor needs.
Some gold here, Steve. Before you go, I'm just curious, like the makeup of you and all the things you have going on. Typically when we have someone who's got books and speaking engagements and coaching and podcasts, it's just so much. Where do we find you now? You mentioned this new book, and I think you've got a nice little giveaway for the listeners, this new book. Tell me about it.
So I did bluefishing, and one of the worst days of my life was when they told me to actually do the audiobook. And they
really?
Yeah, oh God, it was painful.
You should have just hired the dad of Bluey to do it for you.
I should have done that. Yeah, would have been cleaner version. But I stood in this box and just had to read while just scrolling through, and it was horrific. And I like natural sunlight, and I couldn't get that in this music. So when I wrote my second book, Go for Stupid, I actually said I am never doing an audiobook. And a friend of mine, I'm in Hollywood, so there's more studios than there are Starbucks. And a friend of mine had a studio, and he went, why don't we do it in the studio? That way you're not in a box. We'll mic you up. You can be freestanding. And so I recorded all 12 chapters in the studio. They scraped the audio, which meant that I had 12 video chapters. So we thought, we'd give it away. So if you go over to goforstupid.com, you can actually get all 12 chapters. I'm not going to be selling you t-shirts or hair products. You can get all 12 chapters for free. Stick them up in the corner of your desk when you're working and just let them roll away and sink in. Someone said to me that if you click it 1.5 times, you can go through the entire book in about 2 hours. So let me read it to you with my lovely little accent.
I love it. What is Go for Stupid about? Did we say that already?
We didn't. If you think about everyone that we mentioned earlier, they went for ridiculous goals. Now, here's the thing, and this is very, very important. We actually touched on it earlier. A lot of people fight for the future. You know, I'm going to break through the impossible. I'm going to crash through this ceiling. I'm going to break that mold this year. Well, when you fight, you've only got a certain amount of energy in which to do it. You can't fight for hours, but you can play for years. So if you change the framework of what you do and you go, hey, I'm not going to break through the impossible. I'm going to make my goals stupid. I'm going to have fun with this goal. How ridiculous can I make my ambition? If you start doing that, your brain starts to become a child again, and you start playing and you start imagining different ways to do things. So when I was starting to research people like Henry Ford, Walt Disney, Oprah Winfrey, I found that they played with their future rather than forced it and fought for it. And so they got more energy out of it. So the whole point of Go for Stupid is to go for ridiculous goals that will have other people laughing at you. And if they don't, your goal's not big enough.
Yeah.
That's the whole premise of Go for Stupid. The art of achieving ridiculous goals.
I'll be reading it and watching it. You mentioned your accent earlier. We just hired someone who's actually from England, and she's living in Arizona now, and she's got that thick accent. And when we got to, we have a training session where we actually do role playing for the sales appointment, and she went second. And at the end, we all agreed, you're going to do the role playing from now on. We just love hearing that accent. I don't know what it is about Americans, but so I love your accent. It's great. It gets me all excited. What is it like? Because you grew up in England, right? And now you're living at, you say Hollywood. What's that culture shift look like?
Well, here's the funny thing. I actually left England, East London, and went straight to Hong Kong. So I went from the British culture in the shitty end of London to being raised in Hong Kong, which was one of the most affluent areas of China. Then I went down to Bangkok, moved over to Geneva because my clients were kings, queens, billionaires, royalty, and some of the biggest, most powerful people in the planet, and then went to Palm Beach, which I didn't like, and then ended up over here in the hills just outside of Hollywood with me dogs and me motorbike. So I like to travel, soak up different cultures, different ways of thinking. I really enjoy that.
What do you like living? Whenever I have a realtor on the show, and so the first thing we talk about is their city and what they love about it, what they love selling about it. You're obviously not selling real estate there, but what do you love about Hollywood? Why'd you end up there?
Well, I'm not in Hollywood. I'm actually just outside, and I'm in a place called Topanga, which is next to Calabasas.
Yeah.
I can see for probably about 200 miles around every single area of my yard. I've got a lovely piece of land where the dogs can just be thrown out of the house and they can just run around. And I've just got space to be me. I'm actually quite introverted. And one of the things that I really fell in love with on my house was that there was a driveway that is hidden, and you can't even see the house. So when I come home, I don't get to see people for weeks. And I actually really love that. And then I go out, fly somewhere, do a gig, do a speakeasy event, do whatever I do, and then come back and hide again with me dogs.
You know, I found a lot of people of your influence, whether they're a speaker or even a mega church pastor, are introverted. Do you feel like, and take this the right way, and I could just completely be wrong, do you feel like in order to get into the on-stage persona where you're shaking hands and signing books, do you almost have to play a character to go against what's natural for you to be so introverted?
Yes and no. And that's a beautiful question. Yes, you do become a character. Like, for argument's sake, being a big, rough-looking fella, when I'm about to go on stage or into a meeting, I'll put jewelry on, so I'll have some big steel rings just to almost kind of like, like a girl will put on her makeup to get ready for the day, or a guy shaving. You get ready for where you're going. But I think the beautiful thing about introverts is you don't want to dismiss them because they're more calculative. An extrovert will jump up on stage to tell a joke, to get a round of applause, to get the attention. But an introvert will go, well, what's the point of me being on stage? And so introverts move with purpose. So I'm a great believer that, and some of the best speakers in the planet are introverts because they only do it for a reason. They're not there for the applause. They're there for the impact.
I love it, Steve. This has been great. Steve D. Sims on Instagram is where we can find you. That takes you to the link tree with all the books and the free book, Go for Stupid. Anything else that you want to say to this audience?
Yeah, if you're going to jump on Instagram and follow me, just send me a little message and let me know that you heard me on this show. And then we can talk shit about it afterwards offline. But yeah, just reach out to me and let me know what you heard. I always like to ask people, well, how did I come across, or how did you come across me? So let me know.
I love it. Well, to that note, we're trying to really push you guys emailing into the show. So podcast@realproducersmag.com. Send us your thoughts. Send us your thoughts about this episode with Steve. If you want to hear from other people or other topics, or if you're just screaming at the podcast because you know the artist I was talking about, and the whole time you're just frustrated that I can't get a Google in the middle of the podcast, you can send it to that email too. Steve, thanks for being on the show. We'll see you next time.